Our teapot is now trimmed, leather hard, and ready to build. When I was throwing the spouts, to show you how to throw a spout, I threw it messy on purpose and I couldn't get it back to where I wanted it to be. I threw another spout, well actually I threw 2 spouts. It's easier to throw an extra spout in the reclaim bucket than it is to throw an extra spout when you drop or mess up one. Okay, I want the spout to be, as I say, one with the clay. You notice how on this one how it just sort of swoops up and it's all one line. If I put it on the way it's thrown, it's going to look pretty weird. I'm going to cut it so it becomes one with the pot. And I want to make sure when I cut it down the middle. Now this wire is a great way to see. I can look down the top and see that's centered and not off to one side. And then I can run that wire down there. Now I've just got a little line down the back that shows where the middle of the spout is. With my knife, I'm going to cut down that line. And I'm going to cut it 2 ways, because that way it stays centered. So now I've cut it off, that's half of that. And if I put this back on again and line it up there, this cut will be as long as that cut and it will stay centered. It's getting there. It's not quite brave enough. Now I can kind of tell centered. I can see this line to there, if that makes sense. And now I can just cut some of that off of there and make it fit. Getting close. I like to turn it sideways, have a look. And you also want to make sure that it's on there straight, meaning it's not on like that. And I keep saying that because I probably I don't see in a straight line. Not much of a pool player, but I have all these little tricks because I really have a problem getting everything on straight and centered. But I have this line, I have this line and that line, and now I can tell it's on center. I'm going to just line it up to where I want it to be, and then I'm going to trace it. Also, I want you to notice that the top of where I'm placing my spout is past the top of the teapot. If you put your spout on lower, the hole is going to be in the middle of the teapot. And then you go to fill it up full of water, it's going to pour out and you can't fill your teapot. Make sure your spout is up high enough that you can fill your teapot without the water pouring out halfway through. So I'm going to just put this draught on there like this. And now I know where my spout is going to go. With my hole cutter, I'm going to cut some holes. Oh, it's all full of water. That was rude. And I like my holes to be tidy. So I'm going to just make them in a straight line. Okay, this hole punch is just you buy it at the pottery supply store. And the nice thing about it is it takes out a piece of clay. So you're not pushing through the clay, like plowing through the clay. You're removing the clay. If it gets stuck and doesn't come out, don't worry about it. You're not going to worry about tidying the inside of this teapot until it's dry. But what the holes do is they're not small enough to stop your leaves from going through. If you put little tiny holes, I find quite often they will fill full of glaze. I do have a trick later on when we're glazing so that doesn't happen. But this is just going to stop your tea bag from blopping into your, more technical pottery talk, from blopping into your spout. It will keep some of the leaves out, but it just keeps your tea bags from your tea spout. And now I want to join that together. I'm going to score. I always score if I'm joining 2 pieces of clay that don't have the same moisture content. And I'm going to be fairly aggressive. It's about the only time I am fairly aggressive. Add some moisture and blend it in. Now you again make sure your teapot is straight, that it's not off to one side. Make sure you're still up past the top, so when you fill your teapot full, Uh-oh, I forgot one thing. Well, I'll just do it honestly. I forgot, I was so busy getting built, to make that tidy. You can see looking in there, I always sponge that tidy, that the holes are messy. You can clean those out a little bit, but don't worry about the inside, like I said, until later. Now it's tidy, now we're scored, and now we're going to make sure it's straight. I have some fairly soft clay here. I like to, again, I'm going to score the teapot on the outside where the soft clay goes into. I want to make sure they're really joined up and that they're going to shrink at the same time. And roll out some coils and fill in that messy part, making it one with the clay. Work it in there. Now I've added moisture to the clay, but when I start blending the clay, I'm going to make sure I blend with a dry finger. You always blend or smear or move your clay with a dry finger. If it's wet, you can wipe it on your apron or your shirt or your pants or whatever. But a wet finger just goes all slidey. You want to blend that. You can see just by that one coil, that spout starts to become one with the clay. Now there's no way of saying, we don't want our pot to have a gender. And if it has a gender, we don't want it really happy. Often teapot spouts have genders and they're very happy little teapots. And I just think they should be teapots without a gender. If you want to do a teapot, you could do like a pretty little girly teapot face with little eyes. And that's as gendered as we need to be. Anyway, I'm going to blend that in. It's going to be one with the clay. It's going to be a happy teapot, but it won't have a gender, and it'll hide its emotions well. Blending that in. I'm going to use one of my favorite tools. Again, most of my tools are very affordable. This one I've made, just give me a minute here. This one I've made, this is just a half of a lid. I like yogurt, and I cut the part of the top of the yogurt, I cut the lid off, and then I cut it in half. It makes a great blender. It doesn't have to be yogurt. It could be cottage cheese or whatever else you like. And I'm just going to do this side quickly, and then I'll do the other side probably without the camera on because it's kind of like this side. But you can see you can take your time, and once that's blended and one with the clay, I'm going to use a damp sponge and get rid of all of those. Now I'm really fussy. I don't know if you can see that there or not. This bump is not one with the clay. Take your time, make it a smooth transition like this one. And then when it's a transition that you like, there's my sponge. When it's a transition that you like, make it all tidy with your sponge. Now I'm going to take a minute. You don't need to watch me do the whole spout. We'll come back and it will be one with the clay. I like a pulled handle on a teapot more than an extruded handle. I will put an extruded handle on a mug, but a teapot just requires a little bit more attention. I like the taper of a pulled handle, and before you start pulling your handles, you have to wedge the clay as if it was going on the wheel. Now I'm just going to get your clay wet and start milking the clay down. When you make your handle, you want to make sure when you finish it's big enough that it feels like it fits the pot, that it has enough handle and substance to lift up that pot full of tea. And I'm just going to start pulling it down. There's not a lot of strength. I mean, we're all strong enough to squeeze that clay right through our hand. It's a don't mess with me attitude. You're going to hold your hands at a certain place and you're not going to let the clay take them big and small. You can use your fingers this way. You can drag your thumb down the middle and make a dent in it. The thing about pulling handles is you can practice, practice, practice. I think this teapot wants my thumb down the middle. I always pull the handle before I do anything else with the teapot. Then I'm going to nip it off. But notice the nice taper there. It's got nice and wide at the top and it's thin at the bottom. I'm going to nip that off and it's going to sit over there and firm up. And when the teapot spout is done and the lid is finished, it should be firm enough to put on our teapot. Okay, this spout is on, but you notice this one has the angle cut and this is nice and smooth. A little trick to that is I have a paintbrush. As you sponge off with your sponge, you wash off a lot of the smaller particles and all your coarse clay kind of comes to the surface. If you just paint it a bit with your paintbrush, what it does is it works that and it doesn't wash away, but it just kind of gets all of the messiness. Now teapots, as I mentioned, I do give a lot of attention to. I think they deserve your heart more than a mug does. But I guess that's my teapot and my heart and my work. So, but I like that to be tidy. You can see how the paintbrush, it smooths it, but it doesn't bring all those it doesn't wash all the particles away like the sponge does. Now I want to have this to have a nice line. I'm going to start just by cutting it. I think I'll use this one, it's sharper. And I'm just going to just hold it kind of level to the floor. And notice I'm supporting all the way around. I'm just going to cut that off. Now cut that out. And it's not quite there. I have my rasp I've talked about before, and I'm just going to rasp that guy a little bit flat. Always supporting very gently. And it's messy, and I'm not going to worry about that right now. I'm going to look at the line. I want a bit more taken off. And before I go too far, I'm going to make sure it's level. And I can see from here that I'm not. And I have my level. Magically appearing from the right. And you can put it on, and you can see, whoa, I am crooked. And I really do have a problem with seeing things that are straight. As I said, my pool game is not the best. That's okay, now the pool table. You can see a little bit more. And it is handmade. It doesn't have to be absolutely perfect, but that's good enough for the guys I go with. And now it's messy. I'm going to just sponge it tidy. Being very careful through all of that. When I threw this spout, I made that little lip thing there. And in all of this, I haven't taken away that sharp edge. Get rid of those little messy bits. And again, I'm just going to quit bringing out all those little particles, make it tidy. Take your time and make it tidy, because the teapot really tells. Okay, so now the spout is done. I just think that's a nicer line, and that's my own aesthetic. Some people like it without, some people like it with. It's up to you. The lid, we have our lid. Now I have a few lids here. I always make a few lids, and it's nice to have that one fits, and that one fits a little bit better. But the ones that don't fit, I will poke holes in, and they can kick around the studio, or I won't poke holes in, and sometimes they'll fit a sugar bowl or they'll fit something else. You never know. I've been known to knock a lid to its death more than once. You have a couple of these in stock. This is messy though, again with my rasp. I'm just going to tidy that off, sponge it up, and that's why I like these lids, because you don't have to do anything but just sponge them down and cut a hole, and they're ready to go. Gently cut a little hole in there. And again, the hole cutter is one that I purchased, and it takes out the plug of clay and leaves a tidy hole. Not absolutely tidy, but that's what we're here for. And then now we have a lid. This one I'm going to leave in stock, as I call it, and who knows, my teapot lids tend to be all the same size after a while. Now it's time to put the handle on. I'm going to put my handle on, and I want to make sure my handle is directly behind my spout, that you're not off to one side or the other. As I mentioned before, I really have a problem seeing in a straight line. Other people can just eyeball it on and it's just bang on, and I'm not other people. I like to use my wire again. I'm going to gently put it in the middle of that spout, in the middle. I can look down and see that it's in the middle of where my lid's going to sit, and then I can just run my thumb over there that way, once I have it all lined up, and make a line. Now I've got a nice line there that is in line with my spout, and for people like me who can't see in a straight line, I've got a straight line. I've made little messy bits here, that's not a big deal. We'll tidy that at the end. I've got my straight line. I can see where my handle's supposed to go. And I'm going to cut my handle at a bit of an angle. So it is one with the clay. And then I'm going to score. As I've mentioned before, I always score when my clay is different. Well, that was rude. Different moisture levels. A little bit of water there. I'm going to score my handle. I'm not going to worry too much about scoring down here. This is where all the weight is. I'm going to put it on there, making sure still, even after my lines are lined up, that it's straight. Because I really do have problems seeing straight. Now I'm going to let it hang over the edge here. And just pull it up that way. And when I'm putting my handle on, I'm looking at the negative space. I always look at the space the handle creates and not the clay itself. See if it's too long, too short. I think that's about right. And I want to also make sure my handle, I have a problem with this one. My handles are always off to one side of the other. I'm going to make sure it's lined up with my guidelines. I like to give it a bit of a definition. I'm going to just put my thumb in there. 1, straight down, 1, 2, and 3. And I'm going to leave that there. We're going to make it tidy. And my handle is really soft. I'm not going to worry about blending it in or anything at this point. It's where I like it. This guy has held my handles up. I like my little sculptures that hang around here and they have to earn their keep. So I'm going to put my spout. I'm going to put my handle up against his shoulder there, and I'm going to check out the negative space. I like them to be a little bit taller, so you grab your teapot, and it's just going to hang there and chill. It's going to be dry, and I got a couple of these. So when it's firm enough, probably tomorrow or later today, I'm going to take little coils of clay, and I'm going to put them in here and make it tidy. I'm just going to put them in here with my stick. I'm going to add a little bit to this one. And I make it tidy. You can see with my little fancy sculpting stick. You can take your time, make your handles again one with the clay. I like to give teapots the time they deserve. And again, this you can see I'm getting close to what I want. And this teapot, I've taken the time and I've got a nice join here. It's got a nice join to the pot. I haven't brought my particles up too much. Well, I have, but it's been brushed with the brush to make sure it's not all the little particles are washed out. I do see one little bump I missed there. I will use my little scraper. Now this teapot, unlike that one, is spout is on, its handle's on, it's tidy. Its lid, you notice its lid is dry. They don't necessarily have to dry together. I won't fire them together. This dip here is deep enough that it will stop it from falling off, so it doesn't matter if they're fired together. But anyway, so that's the handle on the spout, and the lid is ready to go. He's going to sit. I'll make his handle tidy later, and the next time you see this guy, he'll be going into the bisque.